Okay. So I'm a few minutes late, so I apologize, but I'm here. It's been the first time I've been able to get here in the last couple of weeks, so I apologize about, missing some time together with you, but it's Tuesday and I have a minute. So I wanted to come and check in and see how you guys are doing, because I know life has been pretty hectic for me, and I bet the same is true for you. So I'm going to give it a couple minutes before we get going too far in our conversation and see who shows up. But I'm excited to be able to be here tonight with you guys, and hopefully we'll have a few people hop on and join us tonight. So I will do some introductions here in just a moment. But my hope for you guys is that tonight you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, to spend some time with your, sharing thoughts. Hopefully that you and I will be in conversation with one another rather than me just being a talking head most of the night. But it's going to take some conversation. So you will have to type in the chat if you want to ask a question, or if you want to know anything specific, or if you have something you'd like to share with the rest of us. So the only way that I will know that you are here is if you check in by leaving a comment. Otherwise, I have no idea who shows up. So I just want to remind you that there is a bit of a delay on everything. So if I don't get right to your comment, that's because there is a delay. So looking pretty barren right now. It's a whole lot of nada happening. So I will wait just a couple more minutes and then we'll get going. But oh my gosh, the weather is shifting in Oklahoma and it makes me so darn happy. I don't know if you followed my tomato debacle of 2023, but I have had a ton of tomatoes. So throughout my whole life, I've been a tomato lover. I love growing them, love eating them, just love tomatoes. And I have grown tomatoes for quite a while in Oklahoma and had great success. But this last year, I bought 4 tomato plants. Not one of them produced anything until September, and I was baffled. And even in September, I got like little baby tomatoes, super small, and none of them really ripened or turned into anything that was even edible. So by the time the first frost hit, they had all either split because of like the inconsistencies with water, and they never really ripened. They were all super hard on the inside with like weird splits, and anyway, it was weird. So, that being said, it froze here a couple weeks ago, and I had to cut down my tomato plants because they were just dead. It was awful. So out of my 4 tomatoes, I got really not one single edible tomato plant, or edible tomato. It was sad. Okay, it looks like we are going to roll ahead and get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Morgan. I'm the pastor at a small church here in Brookside called Community Brookside. It is a United Methodist congregation, and we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary at the end of October. Hey, thanks, Gene. That's weird. It didn't even show me that you were watching. Dude, that's weird. Anyway, glad that you're here, Gene, because it doesn't show me that anybody is live. I might just turn on my phone to see if that does a better job. It's just so weird. Okay, so I've got it here. We'll see if anybody else joins. But Gene Welker, I'm glad that you are here. Better luck next year, she says. Yeah, we'll see. I might have just given up on tomatoes, so who knows. But again, so my name is Matt Morgan. I'm the pastor at Community Brookside. It's a United Methodist congregation in the heart of Brookside in Tulsa. We are a new congregation. We're about 5 years old. We started just before COVID. That was fun. But we are on the post side of COVID, and life is really, really good. Church is growing. Numbers are up. People are getting involved. It feels really, really good. So welcome to my workshop, or the center of my nerd universe. So this is where I do 3D printing, laser cutting and engraving, play video games, fix stuff. Back behind me, you can see my workshop where I fix stuff, or my bench. Anyway, so, and you're in my house, so welcome to my home. Glad that you're here. Tonight, I want to do just a couple of things. So this conversation, unless we get some more, oh, Denise is here too. I show nobody live. what is happening with Facebook. I'm glad you're both here. Hi, Denise. I'm sure there are others. I just can't tell. It's so weird. Anyway, but yeah, I've got a couple things I would like to do, so it might not be a long conversation tonight, and if you're okay with that, so am I. But I want to talk a little bit about the last disaffiliations for 2023. I want to talk about the resolution to the court case against both First United Methodist Church in Oklahoma City and Church of the Servant regarding paragraph 2553. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about death and dying. And I know that sounds really weird, but it just kind of got a little more personal this weekend. So let's chat, okay? First of all, I'm going to open up with a quick prayer. If you don't mind, let's just say a quick blessing over our time together. Gracious God, I thank you so much for this opportunity that we have together to just spend time in relationship with one another, God, that we have time to talk about your church and time to talk, most importantly, about Jesus. Father, I ask that everything we say and do be glorifying to you and be edifying to others. And this I ask in the name of Jesus. Amen. Looks like good. You guys are having conversation. Good. Love it. So here's the deal. Paragraph 2553, when launched in 2019, allowed for disaffiliation of churches. We know this. We've gone through this a number of times. The disaffiliation was specifically and explicitly having to deal with human sexuality. So a church, if you disagree with the Book of Discipline on the way it's written about human sexuality, there's an exit point. You may disaffiliate and take your property with you. Maybe you disagree with the fact that your annual conference has made moves to either allow self-avowed practicing homosexuals into ministry. You may exit because of your disagreement with the actions, or maybe it was the inactions of your annual conference. Maybe your annual conference is not following through with the now directed Book of Discipline responses to pastors who are gay or allow gay weddings in their churches. You may disaffiliate. Those are basically the only ways that you can disaffiliate. Looks like Gloria is here also. Good evening, Miss Gloria. So now, paragraph 2553 is expiring at the end of 2023. So this paragraph that has allowed churches to disaffiliate and take all their property is going to expire on December 31st of 2023. So churches have been in a rush to make sure if they were going to disaffiliate, they've got to do it by the set deadline. So the bishop early on set a deadline of, I believe it was like September 9th or something like that, that all disaffiliations had to be in process pre-September 9th of 2023. And that way it would guarantee that you could be voted on at the last called annual conference, which was October 13th and 14th in Oklahoma City. And there were a couple churches that were going to have issues with that. We've talked before about how First Methodist Church, there were issues with the membership rolls and the numbers. It seemed like there was some voter disenfranchisement that was happening, and so they were disallowed from voting, and the church at that point struck up a lawsuit against the Oklahoma Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church and sued to leave the denomination. At that point, the judge said, you know what, you're right. We think that the church is being unfair. You can go ahead and disaffiliate. Not only that, but we're going to call back all the other churches that have disaffiliated, and they will get a chance to vote on you to make sure that we can push you through disaffiliation. So it seemed very, very biased towards the First United Methodist Church, Oklahoma City. And again, I don't know all the wording and all the details. I'm kind of giving you the Cliff Notes version. And anyway, so the conference, the Oklahoma Annual Conference, appealed that decision because it made no sense that a district judge could tell the church how to do the actions of the church. So it was like this whole separation of church and state clause became very muddied in this decision by the judge, because she had basically said, I can step in and tell the church how to do church business. So the annual conference appealed. It went to the Supreme Court. Just a week or so after that, Church of the Servant, who also sued the Oklahoma Annual Conference for the ability to leave the denomination, their lawsuit was heard, and it was by the same judge who basically made the same ruling in that case, said the church is being unfair the conference is being unfair, so they need to allow this church to hold its what would have then been the third vote. And there were some rules that were being broken there. The reason that Church of the Servant was not allowed to vote to disaffiliate was because it missed a deadline. So they had their first vote on September 11th of 2022. And by the discipline and by the rules regarding paragraph 2553, they had to wait a full 12 months in order to be able to vote again to leave the denomination. Now, however, they did vote twice on the same day. In September 11th, 2022, they voted. It was a close vote, but it did not pass. So the district superintendent allowed them to have a second vote on that same day. They voted again. It got a little bit closer to passing, but it still did not pass with the 67% margin. So they were not allowed to disaffiliate, and they had to wait 12 months. Well, that 12 months, September 11th, puts it past the bishop's prescribed date of September 9th in order to vote again. And so they were not allowed to take their third disaffiliation vote, went through the courts, and they sided with the church. And the Oklahoma Annual Conference then said, no, we disagree with your ruling, and they appealed that one also to the Supreme Court in Oklahoma. The judges of the Oklahoma Supreme Court decided they would take those two cases and convert them into one, and they would issue a ruling on both of those cases at the same time under one case number. That happened. The hearings for that happened on October 5th, and a decision was basically handed down by the Oklahoma Supreme Court that said the district court had no jurisdiction and should not have made that ruling, and they basically reversed the ruling of the judge and said that the courts cannot take action against any involvement in the church. So the rulings were basically thrown out, and the church's decision, meaning the bishop's decision, the cabinet's decisions, stand that First United Methodist Church, Oklahoma City, could not make a vote to disaffiliate because they hadn't done the things necessary to fulfill the requirements to make that vote. And then Church of the Servant couldn't disaffiliate because their time had lapsed. And here's where I struggle. Like the Oklahoma City United Methodist Church, First United Methodist Church, Oklahoma City, I personally, and this is just my opinion, which is relatively unimportant, but my opinion is they didn't take the right steps. If you've read through the 20-page document about disaffiliation, you would recognize that every district superintendent has the right to ask you to do a membership verification. I can't remember the exact terminology at this point, but it's basically like it's a viability study is what it is, to make sure that your numbers would allow you to support the church, even if the conference is not affiliated with your church. So that's exactly what happened because of the number differences between the end of year report 2021 and their initial trying to vote in 2022 and the initial votes taken in January of 2023. So the end of year report 2022 said they had something like 4,500 members. And then 15 days later, they asked the district superintendent to start moving through the discernment process. And as a part of that, you have to give your membership numbers. And they had magically lost like 2,000 members, 2,400 members or something like that. So in 15 days, that is an impossibility. There are ways that membership numbers are gone through and audited, and that process was not done correctly. And so my opinion is the DS, the bishop, not allowing them to vote was the right decision. They did not do what they were supposed to do in order to be able to take that vote. Church of the Servant is very difficult because they had done all the right steps and all the right moves. They had just missed a deadline because they had to wait 12 months from September 11th, 2022 to September 11th, 2023. Therefore, they missed the September, I guess it wasn't the 9th, it was like September 5th or 6th that they had to have their disaffiliation votes done by. And because of the limitations of that 12-month period, they missed taking a third vote by 6 days. And so if they've done all the right things, taking that vote, I struggle with it. Like, if it was me, and I was gracious, which I'm not, but if I was gracious, I might have allowed them to vote. However, again, if you do that, you kind of stretch the rules for them when you're not willing to stretch it for really anybody else. So I can see how that could be a slippery slope. But they missed a deadline by 5 or 6 days, and that made them basically disallowed from voting. So the ruling of the Supreme Court is that the church rulings stand, that the district judge's ruling does not stand. The judge did not have jurisdiction to make a decision. So those churches are remaining United Methodist. Who knows what that really means? Sometimes you can... I don't know. I always feel like if you want out of a relationship, you will find a way out of that relationship. And so my expectation is that we haven't heard the last from these two churches. And if this was a Saturday morning cartoon, you'd hear a moo right after that. But I don't think there's anything nefarious about, what's going on. I think that those two churches, like I say, they might not be done what they're trying to be able to disaffiliate. So regardless, we are now fully out of disaffiliation season. All the disaffiliations that have happened are the ones that are going to happen. There will be no more, at least until after General Conference of 2024. There might be some rules that are added. There might be some paragraphs added that allow for disaffiliations in the future, but we don't know. So 2023 was the last year of disaffiliations under paragraph 2553 that sunsets December 31st of this year. So we are no longer in disaffiliation season. That time might come again, but we don't know. Interesting news. I saw that just this last weekend, some of our friends from the Global Methodist Church got together and did some ordination services. It looks like they had a really good time. Got to see some of my friends be ordained in their new denomination. So blessings to them in their new journey. Jamie Willis, great friend of mine, was ordained a deacon in the Global Methodist Church. So love you, my friend. Good luck in that. What a great guy. Anyway, so, a lot of cool things are going on. The United Methodist Church is hopefully back in the business of making disciples for the transformation of the world rather than, putting on tourniquets where there's bleeding, where United Methodist churches are disaffiliating and leaving the denomination. So hopefully we can get back to doing the good work of the gospel. And let me be very clear. There have been churches throughout our conference who have been doing that work all along, so don't be fearful of that. It just stinks that the leadership have been stretched so thin over the last 2.5 years, at least 2.5 years. Where we've been really full on in disaffiliation season, that I'm excited to see what the church will look like when these guys are, fully back at it again, So anyway, it's good to be out of that season. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. Glad to answer anything I can. But tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about death and dying. And I know this, I've mentioned it earlier. It sounds weird, but it was yesterday. My wife's grandmother passed away. So her name was Georgia. She was very Greek. But Georgia Menge was just a super sweet, wonderful woman. She passed away. She had been suffering from complications from dementia. She had suffered some falls. Her body was just beginning to fail. 96 years old, that is an incredibly long life. And she was just filled with joy up until the last minutes of her life. So, I'm just very, very sad for Nicole and her family. I know this is a time of loss for them, but, it had been expected for a while because she was on the decline. So I want to talk a little bit about death and dying. As a pastor, there's obviously training that goes into what we do. And, I took a class last semester and a semester before that also where, we talk about what it's like to sit with families, what it's like to have counseling sessions with people dealing with grief. We talked about what it's like to plan and prepare for end-of-life decisions that have to happen. And again, there is not a single class that can ever really prepare you fully for end-of-life, but it was a good way to kind of get me prepped. And again, I've done a number of funerals. I did my first funeral when I was 19. No, I think I was 20. 20 years old, I did my first funeral for the father of one of my students at a church I worked at in Oklahoma City. So I'm familiar with funeral services and things like that. But when we as United Methodist talk about the end of life, for many of us, it's a joyful thing because it is a release from the captivity of a mortal life, right? We no longer have to worry about the issues of pain and hurt and sickness and disease and heartache. We are reunited with our God who loves us, and we experience a whole different thing. And we don't know a whole lot about that other than the promise that God is there and we are there with God. So life kind of goes back into a more perfect state. I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever lost anybody that you've loved or cared for, somebody you've dated, been married to, family members, I would love to hear those stories. Just if you would, type me some relationships that you've lost because of end of life, because of death. And if there's a story, I would love for you to type out a story. Tell me those stories. I want to hear them. The reason I was a little bit late getting here tonight and launching the stream was because I was on the phone with Nicole's father and uncle, and we're kind of talking through doing something to honor Georgia's life. Sylvia's here. Good evening, Sylvia. Georgia was Greek Orthodox. She was very Greek. She had a very deep, thick accent and very Greek. Wonderful, wonderful accent. To try to talk to her is great. So I cannot do end-of-life care for somebody who's Greek Orthodox because that is outside of my realm of expertise. You need a memorial service in the Methodist style, got you. You need a graveside service in a Methodist format, got you. Greek Orthodox requires last rites, special prayers, and so I'm not able to do a funeral service for her, but we are going to do a simple memorial service for her at her assisted living facility this weekend. So I'm really, I'm jazzed to be able to talk about the wonderful woman that Yaya was, and I can't wait to just tell stories and hear stories from the people who lived with her over the last year and a half at her assisted living facility. Georgia was a cut up. She was just absolutely adorable, just absolutely funny. You've never heard all the jokes until you've heard a 96-year-old woman tell you sex jokes. She's just so funny. Sylvia says, I lost my best friend, Lucia Evans. Sylvia, when was that? Was that recently or was that a while ago? I know that all kinds of feelings are brought up when we talk about death and dying, but the incredible thing about Georgia is that she did believe in Jesus, and just to hear her talk about her faith was wonderful because she was just so strong in her belief that Jesus loved her and revealed himself to her. And she was telling me stories about how she had prayer answered throughout her life, and it was just really, really beautiful. Some of the stories that she told me about her family and things like that, and about her encounters with Christ. And anyway, so it was really, really sweet to hear her talk about her faith. And if she loved you, you were one of the specials, honey. You are the specials. You are one of the specials. It was really sweet. I got to spend some time with her a week ago on Monday. So just a week before she passed, I went up to the hospital, and she was sick with a bacteria, and so the doctors and nurses were coming in suited up, and I was like, do I need one of those? And they're like, no, it's okay, just be careful. So she said, sit on my bed. So I sat down on her bed, and she just held my hand, and she wanted to know who I was. Which is really sweet. She just cared so much about people in general that she didn't remember me because she, was again dealing with dementia. And I had to remind her, I'm your granddaughter's husband. And then she's like, oh yes. And she began to tell me stories about how she and my wife plotted to bring me into the family when Nicole was just a teenager. So it was really sweet to sit with her in those last moments and hear her just chuckle and remember fondly about her life. and she just held my hand, and it was kind of cold in the morning, or actually it was really warm a week ago, and I had my air conditioner on in my car driving from Brookside out to Owasso where she was, and so she was feeling my hand and holding it up against her face. Oh, it's so cold. Are you cold outside? Is it cold? I'm like, no, it's really warm. It's beautiful out there. I wish you could be out there. And she was a woman who loved being outdoors. It was really sweet. And she started just kissing my hand. Like she was just such a loving person. She just was kissing my hand and just staring at me in the eyes and just telling me how much she cared for me, and that wanting me to take care of her granddaughter. And so, of course, I promised I would. Jean Welker says, both my mom and dad passed away, as well as my oldest sister and my only brother. Jean, I just can't imagine the loss. Gosh, I dread the day that I lose my parents. My mom has health issues. My dad is strong like a bull. But I worry about my mom because the older she gets, it just seems like she becomes more frail. She has arthritis, and she's very strong-willed, but her body is not as strong as her will is. And so I worry about that with my mom. And then, gosh, the day that my dad goes is going to break me. I'll struggle with that. I know that. There was a time where my dad and I did not get along. I was much younger, and he was too. But I'm just so thankful that he's basically my best friend now. And, there will come a time where that day comes, and I'm struggling with it, even thinking about it now. But the good news is that, again, we in the Christian tradition, we recognize that death is not the end. Death is a transition from this life to the next, where we don't have to worry about the things that have plagued our lives, where God's reign is made perfect. So every chance I get, I make sure that we laugh at funerals. We laugh at graveside services. We smile and we chuckle at memorial services, because it's a time to celebrate, right? Georgia's life was diminished so much that she wasn't able to do the things that she loved. She wasn't able to get up and go in the way she wanted to, and go outside and walk and talk. And it just was really hard for her towards the end. And so now there are no limits on what she can do. So anyway, it's tough. And I know that talking about death for some people is triggering, but I hope that's not the case. I hope that we can begin to really see death for what it is, as a transition. Denise says, I lost my mom in 2001, my stepdad in 2002, my grandmother in 2003, and my dad in 1978. Wow. Did you struggle with those things? I mean, that may be a silly question, but some people, I've seen some people who are relatively unaffected outwardly by death and dying. So I don't know how that affected you personally, but I would love to hear more stories about those people that you lost. Sylvia says, I was 31. The worst part, I never got to say goodbye. She was part of domestic violence. She and her daughter were killed. Daughter was 11. That is awful. So, and this is another thing that we have to recognize, that sometimes death doesn't come as a natural part of life, that sometimes death comes early for reasons that we can't control, that somebody else has control over. And that, to me, is heartbreaking, when lives are cut short because of domestic violence, as in this situation, or because of war, or famine, or disease. I just really struggle with this broken world, right? Like, as much as death for us becomes a relief or a release from the struggles that we deal with in this life, death can be really, really hard when it comes to children, especially. And it's heartbreaking. So Sylvia, that's a terrible and tragic story, and I'm so sorry. Gloria says, just had a sweet college friend die last week. My 9 friends gathered last month to visit with her. Friends since we were freshmen. So thankful she was able to reminisce all together. It's been a year of struggling with sudden cancer diagnosis without hope of treatment. Prayers for the Moore family. Yes, for sure. Prayers for the Moore family. And I'm sorry that you lost your friend. I remember, like, my first real recognition that death was even a thing. I was a young child at St. Mark's. It's another United Methodist congregation here in Tulsa where my family went when I was young, until I went through, or went up until high school. Went up until I graduated high school and went to college in Oklahoma City. But it was such a sweet family at St. Mark's. And I remember there was a young boy named, I believe his name was Scooter, and he had brain cancer or a tumor of some sort. And I remember him being in a wheelchair and eventually passing away. And I don't know much about that story. I just remember that was my first recognition that even young people pass away. I'd always just been under the assumption that life goes on, and then when you're in your 90s or 80s or whatever the age is, you pass. But that definitely wasn't the case. He was a young boy who contracted a tumor, or got a tumor, and passed on early. So I think death is natural and part of life, and I don't usually mourn death unless it is because of extreme situations like you talked about, Sylvia. That's just awful. Denise says, lost my mom very unexpectedly, and she passed while I was on my way to Wisconsin, where she was. I didn't get to say goodbye. It was very hard. I think we all want closure, don't we? When it comes to relationships, we want to be able to tell our friends, our loved ones, our family that we've always loved them. We want to be able to have closure in those relationships. I had a friend who was a pastor, passed away unexpectedly, about 10 or so years ago. And he was somebody who's kind of like a mentor. I was young, relatively young. I'm still super young, but I was pretty young in ministry at the time, and was new at Heritage. And a friend of mine who lived in a very different city passed away unexpectedly. He was a pastor of a United Methodist church and somebody I'd done camp with. And, he was somebody that I really cared for. And I always got this weird, kind of sense from him, like, some days he loved me and some days he struggled with me, and I don't know why. And so when he passed away unexpectedly, it always just felt like there was this empty place where our relationship was never really fully formed in my mind. And so that was hard for me. Family is always hard. And as a pastor, you sit in these moments where it's your own family that passes, and you think, I don't want to be a pastor in this moment. I just want to mourn with you. I want to be your family. I want to celebrate the life of Georgia, and I want to talk about her and laugh and love and cry and hold my wife, who's heartbroken over the loss of her Yaya. And it's weird because I'm also a pastor, and I've been asked to do a service for this family who's grieving, And again, they're all still in really good spirits because I knew it was coming, and they just want to celebrate her, So, it's an honor always to be asked to participate in the lives of families like this. But the hard part is when it's your own family. I don't do weddings at all, but I've had a number of family members ask me to do their weddings, and I won't do my family members' weddings because I want to be your family in this moment. I don't want to be your pastor. I'm not your pastor. I'm your nephew or your grandson or your cousin or whatever. So I just want to be able to celebrate with you. Ask somebody else to do that so I can celebrate with you all day at your wedding. I want to be there with you and for you. I don't know. Sometimes people forget that pastors need to mourn also, because we also have family members that die. And I've never really thought about it until just recently, now that, I've been doing a lot more funerals. I say a lot more. Our congregation is pretty young, and, we're also really strong in my congregation. So, I haven't had to do any in a while, but, I've never really thought about what it looks like for my own family to pass on, or people that I care for to pass on, people in my extended family to pass on. Oh, goodness, we're getting the spams now. That's too bad. I'm going to hide that comment. I don't even know what it is. So, anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about death and dying because, again, I'm experiencing it right now. I'm going through it with Nicole and her family, and we'll be doing a service of remembrance for her on Saturday. And I covet your prayers because, Yaya was such a special woman to so many people. And, it would help me to know that I have folks praying for me. Let's hear what Jean says. Jean says, I was 15 when my mom passed in 1984. She had a heart attack at 1 o'clock in the morning. The last thing I said to her when I went to bed that night was, I love you. And everyone that was home that night, we had watched a movie on Golden Pond. I loved that movie. I wish I had more time with her and had gotten to know her as an adult. Gosh, I can't imagine having that relationship cut short. I think that the relationship between a mother and daughter is so important, especially as you become a teenager and are learning what it means to be a woman and all the intricacies that looks like. So I can't imagine, Jean. I'm so sorry. Gloria says, one thing I know with the passing of dear family and friends is say their name. Talk about memories with the person. It's so sad when those in grief are alone with memories. I agree. It is cathartic. It is life-bringing to be able to tell stories about people we love. And that's why I think funerals are so great and memorial services are so great to allow people to share their memories. Don't tell me sad stories about how this person did a mean thing in the 3rd grade. I don't want to know that. I want to hear how this person enjoyed life and celebrated life to the full and how, the mischief they got up to in a good way. I want to know the stories of romance and relationships and family. And I want to know all those things. That, I think, kind of carries our love for that person or those people into the future. So, just wonderful, wonderful things. If you stumble across this video throughout the week and you have a story you want to share, I would love to know it. I would love to hear your stories. Let me post this in the chat. This is a link to an article about the Supreme Court decision, and that way you can check it out on your own if you have any questions about any of that. I would love to hear them, but I don't have anything else scheduled for this evening's conversation. Don't be alone if you're hurting when somebody you care about passes. Some people are hit with debilitating depression and anxiety and grief when people pass away. So I encourage you, don't be alone in that. Don't ever sit alone in that. There are organizations that want to take a phone call from you. There are pastors and people in your pews that sit next to you every Sunday morning and who are in small group with you throughout the week who want to hear those stories. This is for all of us. You don't have to suffer through death and dying alone. Bring people along with you. Those journeys are so important and so life-changing at times. Don't do it alone. So I'm really thankful that all of you incredibly strong women have been able to share some of these stories with me. Gosh, when life ends too soon, it's heartbreaking. I know, I'm not going to tell other people's stories, but thank you guys for sharing that with me. Gene also goes on to say, I was 19 in 1988. He had cancer. He had dementia. He thought I was a nurse from the days in the Navy during World War II. I was holding his hand and talked with him and told him I would be fine and he could be with Mom. Those are great memories. Gloria says, thank you, Matt, for keeping us so well informed. We appreciate your concern and support. Of course, Gloria. I'm just glad to be in conversation. My hope is that now that disaffiliation season is over, we can actually talk about other things that are life-bringing rather than life-sucking, right? So over the next coming weeks, I would love for you to give me some feedback on some topics that you might want to know about, maybe social issues and where the United Methodist Church stands on different things. Maybe you want to learn more about a book or a study or John Wesley or Charles Wesley or a hymn or whatever. I'm here to have these conversations with you. I want to know more. So drop a comment. Tell me what you want to know about. And I will do my best to study up and learn all I can so that we can be in deep conversation with one another. Jean says, give Nicole a hug for us. We love you all. Jean, thank you so much. That is so sweet. And I certainly will. So friends, I am going to plan on calling it a night at this point, but thank you so much for spending some time with me here in my nerd shop. I meant workshop. I appreciate you guys spending some time. If you ever need anything, I would love for you guys to just reach out via Facebook. I've got a YouTube channel that you can follow along to. We've got, email addresses. Go to our website, communitybrookside.com, and it looks like we got another awful comment here. I don't know what it is. It's people trying to get us to join WhatsApp. But before I go, I just want to remind you of some upcoming events. Tomorrow night at 5:30, we are leaving from the church to go to Restore Hope, which is a United Methodist ministry that will help package all the meals for Thanksgiving. So if you are a member of Community Brookside and you want to go put hands to the mission of Jesus, then be at the church. We are leaving at 5:30, so be there a little bit earlier than 5:30 so that we can get to Restore Hope on time and do all the things we need to do in a timely manner. My hope is that we'll have a little bit of time after. Jeff Janes, the director, great, wonderful pastor in the United Methodist Church, told me that we might get done a little early, so I was expecting us to be there from 6 to 8, but we'll get done a little bit early. If that's the case, we'll go grab a burger or something real quick. I know I want to take our teenagers because our youth group is going to go as well, so I would love for them to be able to grab something to eat on their way home. So please come and participate if you're able tomorrow at the church. Don't forget, though, Sunday, we are not having church in the building as usual. We're having it outside because it is the Route 66 Marathon, and we're going to have about 4 billion people, according to my calculations, running by our church. So it's going to make traveling and getting to the church hard. So instead, we're going to shut down our normal service. We're going to go out and give out 40 dozen donuts from the donut hole. We're going to serve coffee to our neighbors and friends who are there to spectate. And we're going to cheer on all of those folks who are running in the marathon. We're going to be good neighbors, so be a part of that. We're going to start at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's when the race begins. If you want to show up a little bit early, we'll need some tables set up. We'll have some, we'll need the coffee to be brought downstairs and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be awesome. Come and participate. It will be a beautiful day, I hope. Fingers crossed. We're just going to have a great time. So tomorrow night, 6 to 8, meet at the church no later than 5:30, and we'll go to Restore Hope. Sunday, the church will be shut down at 11. We're going to have a cheering section out on the park property starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I hope to see you guys there. If you have any questions at all, ask me. Erica will be sending out an email to talk about all this stuff. I think you should have gotten one today about the Restore Hope trip tomorrow, and you'll get another one on Thursday about what's going to happen in the coming weeks ahead. So Sylvie says, as of now, we will meet you there. Awesome. Cannot wait. So we'll see you guys over there. Friends, let's pray real quick, and we'll call it a night. Okay, let's bow. God, we thank you for a time of conversation. God, we thank you for the gift of this mortal life, how wonderful it is to make friends, to have family, to experience all that life has to offer. We just pray for those who are suffering tonight and mourning the loss of their family. God, please remind us that you are a God that's nearby in times of despair and heartache. Remind us that death is not the end, but only a second beginning. So God, be with those families who are mourning tonight. Be especially with Nicole's family as they celebrate the life of Yaya this weekend. Just what a blessing she has been to so many. Father, with all those who have shared their stories tonight of loss, I pray for peace and for just incredible memories of those who are with us no more. God, I thank you for the gift of Jesus, that he showed us what life really can be and then gave it all away to show us how much he loved us all. Father, we bless you for bringing us Jesus, and we ask all these things in his name. Amen. Friends, if you need anything, I am always here. Send me an email, text, phone call. Visit communitybrookside.com. Go visit our Facebook page. We would love for you to know more about us. And if you're looking for a church home, we want to be that place for you. So love you all. I'm going to call it a night. Blessings. We'll see you guys hopefully next week. Till then, be good.